Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of VENDO Velocity. We're happy that you joined us here today. If this is your first time joining us for VENDO Velocity, then welcome. This is your live podcast that is on every Tuesday, and we talk about all the latest and greatest updates and strategic initiatives across Amazon, Walmart.com, and TikTok Shop. So I'm happy to have Matt Mahoney joining us today, who's an Amazon account strategist on my team, and just has a wealth of knowledge across both Vendor Central and Seller Central. So pulled him in for a Seller Central focused podcast today, in which we're going to be going through all of the Amazon Accelerate updates. So Amazon Accelerate took place in September, just a couple weeks ago, up in Seattle, and Accelerate is Amazon's annual conference where they really go through what sellers can look forward to when it comes to the data, other content strategy, optimizations, analytics, just really across the board. What is Amazon innovating on for the next year? But before we dive into it, Matt, please introduce yourself for those who haven't had the privilege of listening to you speak on a Velocity episode in the past.
Yeah, perfect. Nice to, obviously I can't see anybody on a podcast here, but nice to be back on here. I'm Matt. I've been at VENDO now here for just over a year. I've worked with a lot of consumer brands before then on both the vendor and seller side. So experience on both sides of the business, been doing this for like way too long. But so very excited to be on and excited to talk through all the Accelerate stuff as well, since it's a lot of good, exciting things I think coming down the pipeline here.
Absolutely. And Matt, I cannot believe you said it's only been a year because it really doesn't feel like that. It feels like at least three, but um, that's what Vendo years are, I guess. But without
Yeah.
further ado, I'm sure you'll all have Matt's wealth of knowledge here as we go through some of the updates. And we really just want to give our take on what some of these mean for us and what some of these mean for you as sellers. So the first one is Project Amelia. And what Project Amelia is intended to do is it's really intended to be your personal assistant directly within Seller Central. So it's a tool that can help with forecasting, listing build out and optimization. It is currently in beta right now, so you may or may not see it available on your account. But what they're trying to do is make it easier for some of these newer sellers to navigate Seller Central and optimize your brand more efficiently. So they'll give you some of those recommendations. They'll give you a lot of the tools that don't currently exist within the platform now, but it is driven by AI. And that is where we'll talk a little bit more about just throughout this entire episode is how is Amazon leaning into AI. So Matt, would love your thoughts on Project Amelia and how you feel that maybe some inexperienced sellers will be able to leverage Product Amelia. But on top of that, um, is there any value for those that maybe have more experience on Amazon?
Yeah, I think for inexperienced sellers, this will be like very, very helpful. I feel like from working with so many different brands and that come from all different parts of the spectrum, you definitely get like a good idea too of like there's some people that just don't know anything about Amazon. There's people that know a lot about Amazon. And I think for like those new sellers that don't really know as much, they're still trying to get navigate the Seller Central platform, still kind of poking around where everything is. I think it'd be very helpful for them to kind of learn the basics through AI. So whether it be forecasting tools that they have, again, Amazon's never been notoriously the best at forecasting, but just to get an idea and a glimpse of like what Amazon's kind of predicting for you, I think is always at least like a decent start to everything. But yeah, everything else is here. I'm like, hey, like, where's my shipments? Like looking at like simple things like that. Like, when should we expect for the shipment to kind of land at Amazon? I think there's a lot of useful information in there for a new seller that, you might not have all the questions answered yet. You don't have Vendo behind you yet to really like kind of take the lead on a lot of these things here. But I still think it could be, again, very, very helpful and useful, I think, long term there. And I think for even like experienced sellers, I think it can be helpful to just navigate the site quicker. If we can gain back like an extra 10 minutes instead of kind of poking through Seller Central, if we can just get to something within like 5 seconds, I think that could be potentially useful long term. It'll probably roll out being pretty bad. I feel like everything's been rolling out lately. But I feel like long term, like when I'm thinking about like the few years down the road, since it felt like there's a lot of different AI focuses over this past Accelerate. I do feel like they'll reach a point where it'll become very useful even for experienced sellers to just navigate extremely quickly across Seller Central.
Agreed. I think it's more so about the efficiency when it comes to experienced sellers. To Matt's point there, if before, I mean, a lot of the tools and just learning that newer sellers had to do was through Amazon Seller University, which can still be helpful, but through there, you're going through a wealth of videos that they have available to you, different modules that help you train up on Seller Central itself. And now, if they're going to make some of those tools easier to use through AI, then great, that's great for everyone, and I'm sure the experienced sellers will learn how to use that most effectively and to their advantage there. Another thing just on the AI topic is AI powered listing updates. So they are, and as we've already seen within probably the last 6 to 8 months, Amazon is leaning into AI powered listing updates. So it's filling in different product attributes on your behalf. It's giving you titles, bullets, descriptions, all using generative AI, which is making the listing creation setup process a little bit easier for sellers now because it will give you those direct recommendations. And what Amazon is claiming that is that 90% of the time or so, these attributes are actually accepted by sellers with no or minimal edits. So, Matt, I know we've seen this for almost all of our brands, and it's something that we have the ability to approve or reject as it is right now, both on Amazon and Vendor Central, actually. So, talk a little bit about your thoughts on that. Should sellers be leveraging those? How helpful have those recommendations been so far? And how many have you yourself actually adopted?
Yeah, so seeing it on the seller and vendor side, I'll kind of start with the seller side first. When it comes to like titles, bullet points, everything like that, honestly, I haven't really adopted much there. Every time I've tried using it, it's just very, very basic. The way I see it is if you just want something up and running within like 5 minutes with minimal effort, super helpful in that regard. If you just want to get a shell listing built out without really having to think about it, where you're planning on going back and building out the SEO later, but you really just want to get something sent out. Maybe your CEO is hounding at you to get something sent out the door within a day. I think that's helpful. On the vendor side, I've been taking a peek at the back end of all the suggestions that they've been giving us, and they have been getting better. They're not quite to the point where I'd want to adopt a lot of them, but they're at least getting to the point where it's not like if you're selling like, I don't know, something like super random, like a fish tank, and if it's saying like, oh, maybe this could be like a dog crate instead, like something like that, like it just doesn't make any sense. Now it feels like it's a lot more like curated to the products there and the attributes there. And again, it just feels a little bit more accurate. Still not quite where I think it should be. I think it gives it a little bit too much information at times. But I do think it's on the right track forward there. But to your point, like I haven't really adopted it across any different product line yet. But I feel like it's reaching a point just from looking at the vendor side that it is getting better, but still not quite there yet.
Got it. Um, that's super helpful to know, and it's also helpful to understand that on Vendor Central and Seller Central, it's different in terms of how the AI is actually interpreting listing creation in general. So that's something that I think Amazon hopefully will continue to even the playing field long term. We always know that some updates come sooner on vendor, some come sooner on seller. So it's not as cut and dry across the board there, but something that we look forward to seeing develop there. Also, A plus content. They will also have AI generated content support for A plus content. So things like lifestyle imagery, AI powered prompts that you can pull directly from your detail pages can automatically be translated into 25 different languages. And on the advertising side of things, we're looking at now AI generated video. So, as you guys have probably seen and started to test a little bit, for images and advertising images, when you're using those for like your sponsored brand ads, etc., you can have an AI generated image there that just makes it easier for you to be able to flesh out images. They actually announced that at last Accelerate, and we've tested it a bit where you could say, I want to show this product on a bathroom table in X setting. And it will generate that for you. Now, how good the actual creative is of it, it's kind of hit or miss there. However, now with them developing video, we're looking forward to testing that too, since video is typically harder to actually hash out there. So, Matt, want to get your thoughts on just how brands can be leveraging these, how often maybe they should be testing things like updating their A plus content, updating their sponsored brand video ads, or their images that are showing in sponsored brands there. Is it more effective to see those out long term, or does it make sense to A/B test more frequently?
Yeah, so on the I think sponsored brand, so I think it makes perfect sense to A/B test as much as possible. Whatever your budgets kind of allow for, I think it's just really good to get all the data there. Using AI, I think it can be again, everything's been getting much much better. I feel like the first renditions of AI, it looks like your product's just kind of floating in space, versus like what you can see with ChatGPT now, where it can even talk to you in real time, like stuff like that. It's like it's just progressing extremely quickly there, to where I feel like the more you can A/B test and get things done very quickly with AI, you can just get a lot of actionable data quickly. So I think on that side it'd be really good. On the A plus side, actually, the first thing that came to mind when they announced like different languages was just like EU expansion, UK expansion, Mexico, Canada, just a lot of different languages there. And I feel like a lot of sellers, while they're expanding out to those platforms, will just kind of launch with their English products everywhere, and then slowly but surely get it to like the native tongues for each different European nation there. So it depends on how the translations are there and how more or less they are in the native tongue versus like a Google Translate, which we know just isn't accurate. But when they first announced that, the first thing I was like, oh, I'm like, that could be really helpful kind of moving forward. And again, just getting stuff launched quickly, if it works really well, then it does save companies a lot of money, which just felt like what Amazon was stressing a lot and everything. I was like, hey, how can we save our sellers money launching to these different countries and things like that? So again, with that one, that's where I'm really excited too. It's just like the ease of expansion to those different areas too.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point there. I think localization has always been something that Amazon has started to develop and lean into a little bit faster than some of the other retailers. So we're very excited by that as well. But I want to talk a little bit about titles, because whenever you're going through listing optimization, you know how much weight the title plays in your overall ranking. And title is the most important aspect of a listing that really drives ranking on Amazon. And you'll hear a lot of the time that the first 5 words in the title are really important for you to capitalize on from a non branded standpoint, so that you can be ranked on page one for that top non branded keyword. But Amazon recently announced at Accelerate that product titles are starting to be tailored to each individual customer. So, based on how the customer is shopping and their overall preferences and shopping patterns, titles are going to be customized based on that. So it's gathering all of this information from you as the customers. And you've probably heard a little bit about Cosmo. Cosmo is basically what is gathering all of that data from on Amazon for the customer. And then that's talking directly with Rufus, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen already at play when you're shopping, because you can't avoid it popping up in your search, where that is more or less your personal AI assistant on Amazon. So definitely leaning more into contextual clues rather than keyword ranking when it comes to the titles, and seems like a little bit of a shift on Amazon's side with that. So, Matt, I'd be curious to hear just where you think this is going. Right now, of course, keyword ranking is very important. Do you believe that it's going to continue to be as important as it is? Will some of those trends change with Rufus and Cosmo, and how Amazon's leaning into generative AI? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like when the examples that they gave was with sunglasses, and it was interesting to see it kind of live. Obviously, it's curated to whatever Amazon wants to show off, because they're not going to show off something that just doesn't make sense. Um, and in the scenario they showed off, it actually made a lot of sense. The way it was like, hey, look, they're looking for pink sunglasses. We're going to make that as part of your title at the beginning, so customers can read it instead of maybe on mobile. Maybe the pink part of it is all the way at the end, because from a keyword perspective, it's not really going to be something you rank for. Maybe there's only 100 searches a month on that keyword, versus sunglasses, maybe some other different keywords that make sense there. So it is very interesting to see Amazon implementing it. I'll hold judgment until I can have it both as a shopper as well as a brand. I think from a keyword perspective, though, I think it'll still remain equally as important to make sure you have a keyword dense title that, in my opinion, is also marketable as well. So that you have the best of both worlds. And then honestly, like seeing all these contextual things being added, it's going to be more important now more than ever to make sure your backend's filled with all the appropriate information. Someone's looking at pink sunglasses, you don't want your purple sunglasses to show up. You want your pink ones to show up. So you want to make sure in your backend you have that all filled in correctly. And that Amazon can kind of pull the context it needs to show the customer what they're looking for too. So again, I want to hold judgment on this one. I feel like everybody's jumping the gun when I hear like, oh, we're gonna mess with titles. But from it's always good to think from both that consumer perspective as well as the brand. Brand, we're gonna find pretty much everything annoying. Agency, we're gonna find it annoying. But maybe from a customer perspective, it helps them actually convert on your product better in that instance for that. So again, up to debate on this one, what will happen, but definitely interesting to say the least there.
Totally agree with you there, Matt. I think it's clearly causing a lot of buzz, and people are trying to say that there's less of an emphasis on keyword ranking. We really don't believe that right now. We just believe there's more of an emphasis, in addition to keyword ranking, on things like attribution and making sure that you're providing brands with that context there. So,
Right.
and sellers with that context, really, because you want to make your listing as complete as possible, and that's not just within the actual backend attribution. To Matt's point, that's everywhere in your listing. That's in the infographics, that's in your A plus content, brand story, all of the scannable text that is available for Amazon to decipher that information, and build something from it, get context from it. It's all just as important there, that we are being as complete as possible. Um, what about some of the AI powered tools? I'm excited by a couple of these. I want to start with some of the more basic ones first. Business Planner. That's directly in your growth opportunities. That's a newer tool that they are rolling out to basically set, track, and achieve your growth goals. So you could say, okay, I want to create this personal plan, this personalized plan to meet these goals. I want to increase traffic, or I want to drive more sales, or I want to reduce costs. And it will give you recommendations on, here's your action items that you should roll out in order to achieve these goals. And then they're also launching custom analytics where it will show you, again, things like sales, traffic, inventory, ad performance. And you could build specific reports that are customized directly for your business. So I love this from an agency point of view, because now we're going to look at each brand a little bit differently based on their specific goals. So, for example, if a brand wants to reduce customer acquisition costs or grow top line, those plans are going to look very different, and we could tailor our strategy, as we already do, but directly in Seller Central now, we could tailor our strategy to fit those goals. So, Matt, curious on your thoughts on, are any of those exciting updates to you, or what are you looking forward to most as far as some of those features from an AI tool standpoint?
Yeah, anytime you can make goals very visible and easy to kind of like digest, I feel like it'll help a lot of sellers to really start reaching those much easier than they would have before, where maybe you're having to do a bunch of different processes outside of Amazon. I think it'll be still very helpful. Again, from a business point of view, you have to always think of stuff even beyond Amazon to like your TikTok strategy, your Walmart strategy, so on and so forth with everything else there. But I think from just strictly Amazon, it will help you to be like, hey, like, what am I missing? Like, am I missing one thing? Like, maybe I'm too in the weeds all the time that I'm missing like easy things that just, if I just take one step back and be able to see it. I think with all these AI tools, it will help kind of like pull back like the blinds a little bit so you can really see like, okay, like what am I missing? Like, what are the tangible things that are going to drive sales here? Am I missing anything? Is there any growth opportunities that are just easy, low hanging fruit that I can kind of attack quickly and start to kind of drive to those goals there? So I'm excited from a goals perspective. I love just like having my own goals, like having them set now for Amazon side of things, and having it easy to access to, easy to kind of navigate, kind of showcase like what we're doing. Um, really excited on that side of things there.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of some of those goals, a couple other things, as Amazon leans into the customer journey specifically, they're really trying to give brands more analytics related to their customer journey. So one of the most impactful updates that they made probably a couple years ago now was around search query performance, and just understanding your marketing funnel, seeing where specific brands drop off in terms of click share, cart ad share, conversion share, etc., which we use every single day just to understand which keywords we maybe need to be leaning into more, and which keywords maybe make sense for us to pull back on. So that's one thing. But what Amazon said as far as customer journey analytics is you're going to be able to see in more detail where customers are starting and ending their shopping journey with more visualization features that will only help you drive more sales. So with this, you could focus on your high intent shoppers to reduce some of those customer acquisition costs and really lean into those brand loyal consumers. And on top of that, also unlocking enhanced audience targeting. So for brand tailored promotions, we know brand tailored promotions allows you to tailor specific promotions to cohorts of customers. They're now adding a few additional cohorts, which include a cross sell feature. So on top of targeted cross promotions, catalog wide cross promos, virtual bundles, you can be launching some of these targeted and tailored promotions for cross sell specifically. So, Matt, talk a little bit about just how you've seen the evolution of brand tailored promotions, where you could see that going. I think it's interesting because they also kind of deprecated the manager customer engagement tool, which you thought that those would work together. But curious on what your thoughts are just as far as that evolution, and where you think it's going.
Yeah, and brand tailored promotion side, it's always been interesting. Like when they first launched it, it felt like more or less like the thought behind it was almost like not competing with Shopify, but bringing those like Shopify style features to Amazon, to where it's like, oh, brand card abandoners is probably one of the biggest kind of buckets within brand tailored promotions. Seeing the amount of growth that's driven for a lot of different brands has just been great to see. But always kind of like the downside is you weren't really able to curate it like a per product, per ASIN, and really drive strategy that way. And then there can be some hesitancies where maybe you're like, hey, I'm not very profitable on this ASIN, but I am profitable on these other 8 ones. I don't really want to run it on this ASIN. With a new update there, you can actually now specify which products you want, which will be really nice. Again, like maybe you want to run a 20% off strategy for brand card vendors on one of your products because you have the margin for it. You want to drive more, traffic there, more sales that way. Versus maybe your other products, you're like, you know what, we really only have 10% off that we can provide to the customer. So I think it will get a lot more granular with what you can do. And the cross-selling promotion was one of the ones for me where I thought was really nice. Just adds another way that you can kind of grow your brand presence, get more people to buy multiple of your products, grow your overall like AOV on Amazon as well. So it'll be super helpful moving forward there. I'm really excited. I think once they can do something to where I feel like the only downside is you have to go back to the listing and show intent to really want to shop. I think once you can start getting like maybe push notifications and email notification, like, hey, saw you're looking at this, here's 10% off, maybe to entice you to buy this. I think once Amazon goes down that route, which I don't know if they ever will, but it feels like the lowest hanging fruit for them to really start driving sales that way too. So I think that's probably the next evolution beyond this, but we'll wait and kind of see what happens there.
Absolutely. No, that's a good point. However, Amazon can help brands retarget the customer, especially for those that are more subscription heavy or more repeat purchase friendly. That's something that we look forward to very much there. I want to talk about a couple other things specifically on the ad side. I know we mentioned the video generator and how you can create a video with one click. Amazon is also saying that the image generator that they launched via AI last year is also going to be evolving to add motion into your images to just bring to life the product more, and improve engagement. So I think this is interesting too because we've seen the impact of UGC and more authentic content. So you think that more naturally an image like this that has motion is going to stand out a little bit compared to a still image. So Matt, do you think that brands will be open to testing this, or how do you see that kind of coming into play with brands' overall strategy?
I think the brands that will lean into this will be probably on like the not smaller scale, but ones that have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the brand look. I feel like the larger your brand gets, where you have a lot more brand guidelines, a lot more kind of like nuance, and you want to like kind of curate the experience a little bit more closely, those brands won't opt into something like that. I do find it very interesting, like the motion, if it'll actually make like a tangible difference over, like, let's just say, creating a video with it too. That feels like the kind of like next level above like a motion picture there. But overall, very interesting. I mean, the photos and the accelerate demo like didn't look bad, but at the same time, like I looked at it, I'm like, this kind of just looks similar to what we've had before, just with like a little bit more motion in the background, which did look a little bit more natural, but it still wasn't like a perfect example.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, it looked better than I thought it would, but to your point, Matt, you could still very much tell that it was AI generated. So we'll
Yeah.
be curious to see how the algorithm continues to learn there. But a few more analytics specific updates that I wanted to cover here was post purchase analytics. You're going to be able to better understand what's motivating customers to purchase. There's also a product performance spotlight where directly in business reports now, I'm sure many of you have seen that you could filter by ASIN and look at a specific ASIN sales without downloading the full report. But on top of that, it's aggregating all of the main KPIs for you. And again, to Matt's original point, it's giving you those actionable insights so that you know what you can do to improve those specific metrics for your brand there, while also comparing that product to other products in Amazon stores. And then lastly, really expanding upon customer return analytics and insights. So what is the feedback that customers are leaving? What are the return reasons, etc., which I think they've actually done a better job historically on the vendor side with the concessions dashboard and such. So Matt, because of your experience on vendor 2, would love for you to kind of give your feedback on that return analytics and insights dashboard and really how you feel Amazon can continue to improve upon it, but what value it serves for brands right now as well.
Yeah, so on the vendor side, the concessions dashboard is, I don't think it's as useful as it could be. I think that it does give you some pretty good insights on like what your return reasons are. Like, kind of gives you like a UX view on like what's the scale of your product here. Like, is it really highly returning to really worry about it, or are we like safe, like not as low of a return rate as the rest of the category? Sometimes the issue I have with the concessions dashboard is we can end on cord out of nowhere, which on the vendor central side, it's essentially a very high return rate product comparative to the rest of the category. And on those, you usually get all the information of like, hey, why did someone return your product? And they'll give like 10 reasons why. And you'll go into concessions dashboard, and sometimes they just might not be there.
Yep.
So I definitely think there's some improvements that can be made on that side. And if they're going to bring it to the seller side, I definitely think they should make some of those improvements of like, hey, like here were your return reasons exactly. Here's what customer feedback was. They have all this information that they give to you, because when you're making a customer return, 90% of the times nowadays they require a reason to return a product. And it could give you the information just so you know. Maybe it's someone just being like, hey, didn't like the product, just gonna return it, or whatever the reason may be. I think it would be helpful for sellers to know that information. And maybe with AI just condensing it down so you don't get just like 50 of the same reasons. I think that's where kind of like an AI play could come in a sense here on the seller central side, kind of like combining what has worked on the vendor side, but then utilizing AI a little bit better to make it just more tangible reasons on like how you can improve your product. What are the reasons for returns? What is the customer experience like with your product? So you can make improvements to your product that way too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I know we manage a brand in the camera space, and we were just looking at the concessions dashboard last week, and it said the primary reason for the returns was camera. So to Matt's point, not very much insight into, well, what was wrong with the camera? Did it not function properly, etc. It literally just said camera. So again, that's not very helpful on Amazon side, but hopefully they as they roll that out to sellers too and get more feedback on that, that they're consistently iterating on it. I do want to touch and close on a few of the account health related things that we're excited by, because we can't forget some of these when it comes to contacting specialists, product compliance, etc. So for product compliance, Amazon is now giving you the opportunity to address compliance 80% of the time before taking any enforcement action. And now, instead of just receiving those updates via email, They're also building out a user-friendly dashboard similar to what you see in Account Health now, and they'll be integrating that directly within Account Health. They will also be allowing you to submit compliance documentations at the point of listing setup rather than later on, which should really minimize specific compliance related account health issues. On top of that, on the seller feedback side, they're making it easier to file reimbursement claims and proactively reimbursing you for lost inventory in their fulfillment centers. You should definitely still be checking for lost inventory and trying to file your own appeals against that, because it will still happen. But glad to see Amazon taking action when it comes to this as well. And live chat with an associate right now is only available for specific Seller Central sort of support cases. However, within both Brand Registry and Seller Central, they're going to be rolling that out for 100% of the issues handled. So you will be able to use live chat there. They're training generative AI to be able to do that more successfully. And the last thing here is they're piloting Connect with a Specialist, where you could literally get one-on-one help with an expert, quote unquote, in that specific issue, and they will help you until the issue is completely resolved. So now you'll have like little breakout rooms where you could share your screen directly with this specialist and get support that's more tailored to your needs. And they're supposedly training these specialists to be able to do that. So Matt, I know I was really excited by that. I'm sure you are, because too much of our day sometimes is spent filing support cases and speaking with Amazon overseas, where maybe we're not seeing as much action there, but would be curious on some of your thoughts there too.
Yeah, the breakout sessions are probably the biggest update there. I feel like it's finally Amazon listening to a lot of the feedback that pretty much every single person selling Amazon has given to them. Feels like they're finally kind of listening there for that type of update. I think it'll be really nice for them to kind of just be able to look at what we're exactly seeing within Seller Central 2, and then be able to help us kind of make changes as well that way. Some cases I feel like it'll make a lot more sense than others. And then the live chat, like again, the issues that I've had in the past was like trying to deal with what I thought was a simple issue through live chat, only to be told after an hour, 2 hours, like, hey, this actually can only be done through email, so we're going to transfer your ticket there. In my head, I'm like, I would have rather been told that up front in the first place. So I think having pretty much everything be able to be solved via live chat will be really nice in terms of getting stuff done in a timely manner, or a timelier manner than it was before. I feel like that was a lot of the updates I was seeing, was like trying to get stuff done faster and more efficient so that we can continue kind of selling, and then be able to do those preemptive changes, like you mentioned with Account Health, getting documentation uploaded early. All of that will be really nice to basically avoid issues down the line there. So it's nice. It feels like Amazon's finally kind of listening there to a lot of sellers' feedbacks, which is really nice, and should, I think, give a lot of sellers a lot of like hope that like Amazon is listening, they're making these changes, and they're open to feedback on all of them too.
Definitely. And one that we definitely won't be able to touch on too much, but is one of the bigger updates coming out of Accelerate, is a new Seller Central interface. So if you go to sellercentral.amazon.com/Amazon sell/business, Matt, I believe there's also one other link that you can access it for, which I'll let you speak on it a bit there. But what they're allowing you to do is really customize your main home screen to see certain widgets that are more impactful to you. So you could actually see specific advertising metrics at a very high level directly within Seller Central now, without having to navigate to the Amazon Ads console, which is really great there. And they also said that you might be able to build your own widgets down the line. So you can consolidate all things orders, advertising, sales, aged inventory, all of the dashboards that you have bookmarked now. You could have those widgets directly within your home screen. So Matt, let's close on that. If you could give everyone that additional link, and also just give your thoughts on the new dashboard.
Yes, I had to just like refresh my memory. So it's nextgenselling.amazon.com. It'll take you there. I believe, I could be wrong on this part, but I think I saw some setting within the global permissions here that might need to be set for you to gain like full access there. But again, I could be wrong there. Just want to preface that. But I think with that dashboard, when I first saw it, I just thought it was ugly. Didn't really like it. And then the more I kind of thought, I'm like, you know what, like it is just completely different than what I think everybody's been using for, past 10 years on Amazon selling. So we'll take some adjustments to get used to, but I think from just talking through with the team, just seeing like the quick, easy ways that you can just navigate your Amazon business at like a glance, and just being like, hey, like through these 3 different tabs, I can know exactly what's going on in the account. I can know exactly how much you're selling today, how we're kind of pacing for the months, and even the overall trend line for how the business is going. So that regard, I think really nice. I think once it gets built out a little bit more, I think it'll be in a really good spot. Again, I'll probably dislike it at first just because it's change. But I think in the long run, again, with like most of these things, it'll only get better. It's only going to improve. And everything feels like it's just going to make our Amazon sellers' lives just slightly easier than in the past.
Agreed. I think we're all a little bit more resistant to change because of how long we've been selling and because we're used to the certain dashboards and everything. So at first glance, it looks like a bigger change, but as long as it continues to build efficiency for our internal processes and just for brands in general, then we'll take it. So thank you, Amazon, for continuing to iterate that, and hopefully with some more seller feedback, it will just continue to improve. But Matt, it looks like we're a bit over time here, and we can let our audience go. I really appreciate you joining us here today. We'll definitely be having you back here soon. And we hope you all enjoyed this Velocity episode. If you have any questions for Matt or myself, you could reach us via our emails, or you could comment directly on this live podcast on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining. Talk to you soon. Bye everyone.